All right. Rick Levine recently retired from a 25-year career in journalism to become a city bus driver. His work has appeared in The Stranger, The Seattle Weekly, The Village Voice, and other independent weekly newspapers, and his fiction has been published in a handful of small literary journals. He may or may not be running for mayor of Eugene.
This is a short story called Off Route. Hey, driver! It's my final route of the day. 8, 10, 12 hours driving the bus feels like double that, especially your last spin around town. That one takes forever and a day. You're so close, but so far away. By your final route, you've had it up to here, up to the yin-yang. It's all too much. People. Hey, driver, how about turning up the heat? I glance into my rearview mirror. The lone woman who entered my bus wearing a hoodie and a t-shirt is now stripped naked from the waist up. She's sitting on the very back seat, dead center in my sight line, spread eagle, staring at me. I pick up the receiver and press the talkie button. Ma'am, how about you try putting your clothes back on first? My colleagues have accused me of being far too patient with problem passengers, but I don't see the point in being a dick. If someone's life has led them to a place where stripping on a bus makes intuitive and immediate sense, who am I to condemn? I drive the bus for the people. I'm just another American hero. I have no name. And look, she's taking my suggestion. By ripping her t-shirt into a single shred and bandaging her exposed boobs into a kind of Mad Max post-apocalyptic bikini top. I tear my eyes from this scene just in time to notice a couple of people waiting at the next stop. This is one of the dangers of bus driving. You become so mortified or enraptured by some scene of extravagant human weirdness that you can trance yourself right into a light pole. 1 second of inattention and you're toast. It happens that fast. I pull to the curb and swing open the door. A pair of teenage Mormon missionaries enters, both smiling that trademark smile. Hello, sir, they say in unison. There is no more pleasant and polite and therefore desirable bus rider than a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't care how you feel about them knocking on your door. They are good folk. As these fresh-faced young men make their way past me in their identical blue suits, brother this and brother that, I glance again into the rearview mirror, just in time to see the woman in the back haul her makeshift bikini off her tits and place it around her head, Olivia Newton-John style. Whoa. Sorry, I wrote this before. I love Olivia Newton-John. Seated now, I watch the faces of the Mormons drain of blood until they come to resemble the chiseled statuary at Stonehenge. Lips pinched and jaws locked and eyes blank in what I imagine to be the spiritual erasure of carnal shock. I am far more a dirtbag than a prude, but suddenly I'm thinking these poor boys shouldn't be exposed to this sort of thing. Love the sinner, hate the sin. They don't teach you these things in training. I pick up the receiver again. Ma'am, please cover yourself. But she no longer hears me. She's moved on to spreading random crumpled papers on the empty seat to each side of her. She inspects them with the intensity of an accountant during peak tax season, nodding her head to some internal rhythm. And this is another thing you learn quickly driving the bus: when to let go. I have engaged, challenged, insulted, and argued with passengers, and it's never brought me anything but grief. One time a skinhead spit in my face screaming, "I've got COVID, motherfucker." It's not worth it. Unless a situation rises to the level of actual physical danger or codified legal intervention, I've learned to leave it alone. No blood, no foul. Other things they don't teach you in training: that in the 11th hour of your 6th day of 12-hour shifts, you will stop at a red light and your bus will start drifting backward. You will pump the air brakes to no avail, and panic will set in. You will flip the emergency brake and consider bailing from the vessel until you realize you are simply hallucinating. You have spent so many hours propelling yourself relentlessly forward that a sudden lack of movement will fool your addled brain into manufacturing a reverse zoom shot as the world pulls away from you in slow motion. It is said that sharks keep swimming in their sleep lest they die. There's an analogy in here worthy of Karl Marx, but I can't for the life of me find it right now. A hard stop on a bus traveling a mere 15 miles an hour generates enough raw momentum to throw a grown adult across space with such uncanny speed and violence that they seem less to fly than to vanish altogether. I learned this the hard way. Within days of starting training, they put us behind the wheel. I imagine it's the same idea that compels certain parents to toss their kids in the deep end of the pool to teach them to swim. Swim or die. I was driving down Coburg Road. The rest of my classmates were seated behind me, and the trainer stood casually in the aisle, holding the pole and chatting. It's hard to express how scared I was in those first days. No, in fact, the first year of driving. Are you kidding me? Wheeling a 40-foot metal rectangle with a turning radius of a frigate down the streets of Eugene, with people aboard. Give me a break. I am prone to panic. Always have been. It's a disposition I inherited from my father, a child of the Cuban Missile Crisis and Cold War paranoia and fallout shelters, whose anxious mind always jumps to the bloodiest, most disastrous conclusion. I suffered perpetual whiplash throughout my childhood from my dad constantly slamming on the car brakes because of some phantom disaster unfolding in his peripheral vision. And so when that bicyclist pulled up beside me on Coburg Road, appearing seemingly out of thin air, my reptilian brain fired a flare into my tender limbic system, and I jumped on that brake so fucking hard I felt my knee pop. An air brake, which responds with an immediacy you cannot comprehend until you've tested it yourself. As though in a dream, I watched my trainer sail past my right shoulder and plaster himself against the windshield like Wile E. Coyote hitting a brick wall at full tilt. Splat. The impact sounded like 200 pounds of hamburger shot out of a cannon. I'm still amazed the glass didn't shatter, and even more amazed I wasn't terminated on the spot. I figured my career was over. Time for the premature pink slip. Hit the road, buddy. Or rather, stay on the road. Stay off the road. You're a menace. But I should be so lucky. They kept me. And I never made a hard stop again like that. I learned my lesson as I learn every lesson in life. The hard way. Through shame. And usually at someone else's expense. I jettisoned a 25-year career in journalism to become a bus driver. I couldn't sit in an office anymore. I couldn't attend one more pointless planning meeting. I couldn't engage in one more reactionary jackass who discovered politics at the crossroad where disenfranchisement and fear shake hands with idiocy and homicidal anger. Call it midlife crisis. I wanted to get back to my hereditary roots, which are grounded in tangible, physical, blue-collar labor. That the work might also be a form of public service was definitely a plus. I needed a shock to the system, and I wanted to do some good. I needed to scare myself, and perhaps to prove something, even if all I proved in the end was that my lifelong ability to wrap bad decisions in the fraudulent guilt of virtue remains intact. I will drive the bus for the people, I told my friends, most of whom received this information with a touching combination of amusement, support, and bafflement. But all of that is bullshit, actually. The truth is I've been looking to jump ship on the newspaper gig for years, but a combination of cowardice and comfort prevented me from committing myself to a lateral move that would pay the same salary I was now making with a minimum of effort. The truth is, a dear friend was training as a bus driver, and knowing I was unhappy in my work, he urged me to apply, with a refrain I would hear over and over and over again. The benefits are great. Serious. So with the helium-headed swoon of a kid perched on a high dive, I pushed that icky feeling aside and stepped from the secure platform of my former life, free-falling into a pool I could only hope was chlorinated and lukewarm and deep enough I didn't hit the bottom and shatter to pieces. And here's the kicker. After I was hired, and before I even entered training, that friend of mine was fired. Coming back inbound on his first Mackenzie Ranger Station run in the dark, he hit the Blue River off-ramp at freeway speed, not realizing that this particular exit takes a quick, hard, and partially obscured jog to the right. Instead of slamming on the brakes, that ballsy son of a bitch power slid a 40-foot city bus into the gravel without flipping it or seriously injuring one of his passengers. It was the stuff of legend, and they still talk about this guy. As a cautionary tale, they still show the video footage to incoming classes. And just like that, my one connection to the job was severed like a tenuous strand of connective tissue. One more warning sign I failed to see. I survived training despite my generalized anxiety and characteristic lack of confidence in operating heavy machinery. I also made it relatively unscathed through the 9-month probationary period, which I promptly celebrated by scraping the back end of my bus across the sharp metal overhang of a bus shelter at Coburg Industrial Park. There was this awful metallic sound like a bandsaw cutting through galvanized tin, and my guts just hit the floor. I stopped, pulled the parking brake, and sat motionless in the seat for a good 30 seconds before I finally decided to inspect the damage. It was impressive. I gouged a jagged line into the top back end of the bus, poking a spider web of broken glass into the furthest left side window. I thought I was going to puke. That was a difficult call to ops. And I have puked, literally, into my mouth out of pure anxiety. I am also not ashamed to admit that I've cried more than once, driving and crying. From anger, sadness, fear, heartbreak, exhaustion. Mostly exhaustion. I've sneezed explosively into my mask and then driven for blocks with both hands on the wheel as a warm oyster of snot drips down my chin. Gets worse. I've cut farts so thick and noxious I considered filing a union grievance on myself. I've gained weight and developed a slouch. Yes, I drive the bus for the people. It's a gesture of love, of yearning, of democracy at its finest. I am Eugene Debs with chronic hemorrhoids and a lead foot. Jesus Christ with a day pass. Ralph Cramden on steroids cruising the late capitalist carnival of shits and giggles, picking up and dropping off people one by one. Have a good day, take care now, thanks for flying the friendly skies. Another thing they don't teach you in training, that you will bear witness. You will bear witness to things most people never see and can't understand and refuse to believe, because they will chug and crawl and twist and turn your bus into every corner of this metropolis, up into the South Hills and down past Four Corners, out Barger and up Thurston, through Valley River and across Gateway. And your obligatory vigilance will keep you wide open and painfully awake to the scene scrolling past. The endless unbroken hours on the road and the daily repetition of familiar routes will expose you at last to truths that are hidden from the vast majority of your fellow citizens. Truths that could never be captured by a mere glance, a flick of the evening news, a reliance on secondhand reports, trips to the grocery store, visits to the dog park. I am the roving eye, the mobile raw nerve. I bear witness to an American empire in full collapse, a society gone rotten from the top down and from the inside out. I am here to testify to the murderous cruelty of your politics, your escalating genocide on the poor, your religion of cutting throats, your sadistic pieties, your thoughts and prayers, your yard signs of compassion, and your patent maneuvers of disregard. You can't get there from here, they say, but I'll try to get you there anyway. I drive the bus for the people. Strapped into my seat behind that big windshield, I have watched as a half-naked man standing in the middle of the road suddenly decided to charge my bus like a mad bull. More than once, I've seen a rafter of wild turkeys use a crosswalk to cross the road, passing slowly in single file. At Fox Hollow, I have halted for deer at daybreak. I have seen little kids jump up and down, waving to me from the sidewalk, so excited I thought they were going to fall over sideways, and I have absorbed the wonder of it all. I have seen enough dead squirrels and squished cats and flattened raccoons to last a lifetime. And I have seen too many bodies of young men sprawled face down, unmoving on the sidewalk, block after blighted block. I have seen too many impossibly old people crawl out from tents that are propped by the side of the road. I have felt and participated in the disparagement and hatred of the poor, the homeless, the drug addicted, and it has scared me. I have borne witness to the seduction and perversion of the working class by the voice of the enemy, and I have mourned that particular knife in the back. I have listened to my fellow drivers joke about running their buses into a tent city and taking out as many people as they can. And I have watched those same fellow drivers commit acts of kindness they'd be afraid to admit. There's no room for weakness in bus driving, one of them told me. I have finally understood the real reason why Christ was crucified. Verily, I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. Yeah, fuck that. I have also, at last, come to comprehend Nietzsche's terror of the eternal return. The idea that just maybe you will be forced to live your life over and over again, unchanged, just as you're living it now. Because the illusion of time is the prerequisite for the illusion of your obligation to trade it for money in order to better enjoy or simply survive what little of it remains afterward. Time is not something we are moving through. It is moving through us like a fluid, and it is hardening into amber. Don't believe me? Drive a bus for 13 out of 14 days for 12 hours a day in the middle of a pandemic in a country tilting towards postmodern Holocaust, and you'll see what I mean. Time is made real by the very things you sacrifice to survive it. Sacrifice enough of it and it starts to hurt, and you will do anything to stop the ache. Bitching, moaning, blaming the union, cursing the stuffed shirts, drinking, buying a bigger truck, stockpiling ammo, even, ironically, volunteering to work more. Time is everything and nothing. Driving the bus, you can't afford 1 nanosecond of inattention, not really. I've accidentally followed the thread of an interesting thought, and before I knew it, I've blown past 3 bus stops, almost run a red light, and then turned off route. Where the hell am I? It happens that fast. So you learn not to think, or you learn to not think. You have no choice. And what this does to your brain is astonishing, because the brain cannot not think, not technically. The question is whether it is imaginative thinking, daydreaming, or repetitive thinking, or thinking about repetitive thinking. I do a lot of that last thing. I have spent an entire shift singing the same line from the last song I heard on the radio as I pulled into the parking lot at work. I have repeated the same inane phrase in my head thousands of times. You looking at me? You looking at me? You looking at me? The truly odd thing is, throughout it all, with a bus full of strange and exotic people, these are nothing but manifestations of loneliness, run aground on the shores of what amounts to assembly line factory work in perpetual motion. Bus driving is fucking lonely. It can also be quite beautiful, because you're in a unique position as a quasi-civil servant to touch lives that don't seem to receive much touch at all. Your loneliness reaches out like a heart tentacle to another's solitude. Eye contact is key. A smile. I love flirting with the old ladies. I relish talking to the Korean or Vietnam vets. Even the kids are all right sometimes. I try to be kind. It's a world of small gestures. It's going to have to be from here on out. The consolation of small gestures. This is all going to get worse before it gets worse, so love is all we have. One more thing they don't teach you in training. Late evening, midsummer last year, I pulled over to drop a passenger. Pulling away from the curb, I check my mirrors and see that the bus is empty. It's been a good day, fairly asshole-free. I'm in an excellent mood. Every once in a while, the magnitude of your responsibility and task, wheeling this enormous rig around town, shouldering the burden of your rider's comfort and safety, executing a perfect button-hook turn. All this gives you a magnificent sense of what a badass you truly are. I am King Kong, the big dog, I tell myself. Full of exuberance, I start reciting my favorite Shakespeare passage. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. As I drive on, gaining momentum, my performance gains in theatricality and exuberance until by the last line, I'm shouting into the ether. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Ding. The young woman had been seated directly behind me the whole time in one of the bench seats right in my blind spot. Had I checked the fisheye mirror, I might have spotted her, but I hadn't checked. I'm not even sure it was her stop. Chances are she just wanted to get the hell off the bus before I moved on to Hamlet. I gawked at her dumbly as she scurried past, head down, eyes averted. She hopped off the bus and started sprinting down the street. "You take care now," I shouted after her. It's become my patent phrase, "You take care now." It seems to fit the job and suit the times. I said it to an elderly fellow a couple weeks back, and he paused in the doorway and without turning around, hollered back at me, "It does no good to take care. We all fall apart and die no matter what."